So continuing on with the American Homefront Part 2, we've looked a lot about how just kind of like the US is getting prepared for war, building tanks, building artillery, building, weapons, using propaganda to get to use people to buy war bonds or even sort of help with the war effort. We're going to kind of continue on with that theme of propaganda and convincing people to join the war effort. So one of the things that was big in sort of World War II was rationing. So the government was going to limit the availability of products to ensure that there was enough for the military. So items like meat, sugar, gasoline, as well as rubber, those things are going to be limited quite a bit to make sure that there was enough to go overseas. Kind of very similar to what was going on with World War I. You had things like Meatless Mondays, where it was encouraged for people to not eat meat on Mondays, Wheatless Wednesdays, don't eat wheat on Wednesdays. Build victory gardens, so build in your own backyard, tomatoes, carrots, whatever it may be. So that way all that food can go overseas to the soldier. Well, people are going to be doing the exact same thing in World War II. So each household is going to have what's called a rationing book, and it must provide necessary points to purchase particular groceries. And of course, in order to get Americans to support this war effort, they're going to make a little cartoon. And I will come back to this slide, don't worry. But I do want to show you that not cartoon, I'd say commercial is a better way to phrase that. And this used to be, well, it is in black and white, but I couldn't find a black and white version of it anymore, so it's a colored version of it. But you'll see Miss Amanda here and her being encouraged to use her rationing coupon.
This is Amanda, and she's been dreaming of a new pair of shoes. Wouldn't she look just swell wearing those? But like all of us these days, Amanda has a dilemma when making purchases. It's no longer a matter of just having the money, but do you have the ration coupons? You see, with ration coupons, we make sure there's enough for everyone to last the duration, especially our boys overseas. What's that? You think you have enough coupons to get the shoes? Well, let's have a look and see. Well, you surely have a wide assortment of coupons there, but let's see if you have enough of the right kind. No, I'm afraid those coupons aren't for shoes. That one's for meats and fats. You see, the production of meats and fats takes materials and land, and feed required for the animals. And of course, we all know there's a shortage of manpower just now. That means fewer cattlemen to manage the herds, fewer ranchers to tend the chickens and pigs. You see, the ration points are designed to make sure that, in these times of shortages, everyone gets their fair share. But more importantly, they make sure that our boys overseas get 3 squares a day. After all, hungry GIs don't win wars. Let's see what else you have. Now that's also a food ration coupon, but in this case, it's for dried and processed foods. In many ways, processed and dried foods are the best value for your dollar. They have a shelf life that's practically infinite. That means less waste due to spoilage. And as we all know, waste puts victory right into the hands of the Krauts. No, I'm afraid those are for coffee. You know, coffee comes from South America, and that means shipping. More shipping coffee for you means fewer GIs shipped to the South Pacific to take on those Tojo stooges. Nope, that one's for sugar. Now that one is for tires. You see, when the Japs attacked Pearl Harbor, they also captured American rubber plantations in Asia. This means that every bit of rubber must be saved for Jeep tires, watertight gaskets on submarines, and many other uses. That is a very important coupon. Perhaps the most important of all, gas. Battleships don't steam, bombers don't fly, and tanks don't chase Jerry out of France without fuel. Never buy more than you need. That puts Hitler in the driver's seat. Now you have it. That's a shoe ration coupon. Shoes need to be rationed too, because all the materials used to make shoes also make holsters, belts, and boots for our boys. That means a pair of shoes back here at home need to last. My tip? Get to be friends with your local cobbler. Well, how many do you have? And how many points are the shoes? Oh, that is too bad. I guess you'll just have to wait a few more months for that pair of shoes. Miss? Oh, miss. Now what are you buying? So this is what you bought with your ration coupons. Well, is it just as good as a new pair of shoes? We can't argue with that.
So yes, that is real. That was a real commercial or propaganda commercial that the U.S. government definitely made. And you can tell that even throughout that commercial, the language is very intentional, right? Talks about like, coffee and how it gets made in South America and shipping costs. That's bad because shipping is going to force like our boys to not fight the Tojo Stooges in the Pacific. Right, specifically referring to the Japanese. Even though Emperor Hirohito was like the leader, everyone sort of knew that in Japan, Hideki Tojo, who was like the main general, was the guy that was like leading the way. So it was like, hey, if you're shipping more coffee, that means like we can't fight guys in the Pacific. She goes to the grocery store and she's looking at all the steaks, and it's like, our boys don't necessarily have enough to eat, and we want to make sure that they do, because guys who are on an empty stomach aren't going to be able to win. Again, kind of guilt tripping, very intentional. Encourages people to buy canned goods because it's going to last a lot longer. So a steak that you get from the butcher block, even if you freeze it, it's only going to last so long. But if you buy, say, a can of beans, that might last you a couple years. Talks about like putting Hitler in the driver's seat with waste, and kind of refers to Germans as Krauts. So sauerkraut is a very traditional German dish. But the language is very intentional to be like, listen, you need a ration, you need to save to make sure that our boys can fight, that they're, that they have the tires that they need or the food that they need in their stomachs in order to be able to win the war. I always ask kids every year, do you think that this is something Americans would do today? And like universally, they all go, no. And I definitely think that that's true. I think that we are very sort of spoiled and a little bit of like a more selfish generation, in that like, if you want to eat something, you can go and eat it. And, to ask people to ration probably wouldn't happen so much. But you can kind of see like similarities, with the pandemic, especially in March and April of last year. If you went to a grocery store, most canned goods were completely gone, whether it was spaghetti sauce or canned beans and vegetables and things like that, because those last a lot longer than, say, the fresh produce that's in the produce department. So you can definitely see a little bit of similarities with the pandemic, and that people sort of had like this, like, we have to survive mode. Americans are also going to hold scrap drives, and the idea was that they would collect spare rubber, tin, aluminum, as well as steel. And again, so like if you collect spare rubber, those things could be made to, to make fresh tires or whatever it may be. Tin, aluminum, and steel could be used to make weapons, maybe helmets, things like that. Americans could also exchange their bacon grease and meat for more like meat fat for more rationing coupons. So why bacon grease and why meat fat? Well, they're flammable and can be used to make bombs. How? I don't know. Science is not my thing. So exactly how like they would make like these bombs, I'm not entirely sure. I just know that you can. I think that would be a great question for like your chemistry teacher. So if any of you have like Mr. Galvin or Mr. Pierce or Miss Lambert, those are like the chemistry teachers I can think of off the top of my head. They would be excellent people to ask. But as for me, I'm not entirely sure how to do these sorts of things. But scrap drives were definitely big in the United States, especially during World War II. So again, they can collect items that could be used to hopefully, repurpose for the sake of the war. Scrap drives or kind of drives like this, they definitely still exist today where people donate old clothes and things like that. But again, it's mostly just for like your average American and not necessarily for a war effort. And you can see this propaganda poster here, save your cans, help pass the ammunition. So the idea was like, hey, if you're saving your cans or you're donating them, eventually you're going to help out with the war effort at home. So more propaganda, more guilt tripping, things like that. Women, of course, are going to be involved in World War II, and women do join the armed forces. There's no question about that. But many are going to serve in what we call like stereotypical gender roles. There'll be nurses or there'll be clerical workers. I wasn't able to show like a full scene of like Pearl Harbor, like the clip that I normally show in class, but you do see that like all the women that are portrayed in that film, they're all nurses or they're all clerical workers, aka secretaries, things like that. But were there women that like fought like, on the ground? Yeah, absolutely. One of the most famous was actually a woman for the Soviet Union. She was like their number one sniper and I think killed like well over 600 people during World War II. And she was just like a total and complete badass. So women did serve, on the ground or boots on the ground, but again, they were typically in those, stereotypical gender roles. They did not receive the same benefits as men. This is something that women have had to deal with for quite a period of time. And 6 million women are going to go to work in the factories. Again, they kind of mentioned it in that video with Amanda is, the men are now overseas fighting. They can't tend to the chickens and to the cows and the farmland, so there's not as much meat. But there's also, not men working in the factories anymore. So someone's got to work in the factories. Who's going to do it? Well, guess what? It's going to be the women. The women are going to be the ones that are producing the tanks. The women are going to be the ones that are going to be producing, their artillery or the jeeps or the trucks or whatever it may be. And as a result, you're going to get a very iconic figure that comes out of World War II. And that's going to be none other than Rosie the Riveter. And the way that she's going to get her name is from a popular Four Vagabond song. And she became a cultural icon as well as a symbol for women in the workforce. This poster on the left, I'm sure many of you have seen this in your lifetime. But to give you an idea of the song, I want to go ahead and play it for you now. And again, it's called Rosie the Riveter from the Four Vagabonds.
All day long, where the rain does shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie, the Riveter, keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage. Sitting up there on the fuselage, that little brave can do more than a man can do. Rosie, the Riveter, Rosie's got a boyfriend, Charlie. Charlie, he's a Marine. Rosie is protecting Charlie, working overtime on the riveting machine. When they gave her a production meet, she was as proud as a girl could be. There's something true about red, white, and blue about Rosie, the Riveter. Rosie, working on assembly line.
I'll pause it there because pretty much it's just music, but you can definitely tell it's got that 1940 style, a little bit of sort of like that jazz, big band kind of swing style music. But it talks about Rosie. She goes to the assembly line every day, rain or shine. She's got a boyfriend, Charlie. He's in the Marines. So even though he's overseas fighting, she's doing her part by working in the factory. So again, it's very like intentional. Like just because you can't fight overseas doesn't mean you can't do your part to help out in the war. This was the original Rosie the Riveter. Her name is J. Howard Miller. She was hired to create posters to boost morale. Oh, excuse me. Let me rephrase that. So J. Howard Miller was hired to create posters to boost morale. Geraldine Hoff, she was the original inspiration for Rosie the Riveter. And initially, when like the posters were created to like encourage women to join, the workforce, it wasn't meant to symbolize Rosie, not the song. But then when the song came about, it just became very popular and it made sense. And Rosie the Riveter, as a result, like ended up, becoming that big thing. Like lost my train of thought, but she's definitely become very iconic, and that poster has become very iconic, and not so much just for World War II. It's become very iconic for, I think, just like women empowerment in general, or just women's rights, whatever it may be. You see people dressing up like that for Halloween all the time, but you'll see Geraldine Hoff here, much older, kind of recreating that Rosie the Riveter pose. This part you don't necessarily need to write down. But this poster was never released during World War II, which is actually quite shocking, and it was actually released during the 1880s. Well, there was a Rosie the Riveter image during World War II, and it was actually a Norman Rockwell painting. The same guy that painted those Four Freedoms posters was the same guy that had initially created the original Rosie the Riveter. And you'll actually see the two of them here. So the one on the left is the original Rosie the Riveter, and this was done in 1843. And then on the right, you can see that there is the 80s version. I always ask kids to kind of compare the difference between the two. So on the left, she's got the American flag behind her, meant to make her look extremely patriotic. She has the Riveter machine sitting there in her lap, and it also says Rosie. You can tell she's definitely on her lunch break. You might not be able to see it here, but she's got her foot on a book. It is Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf was written by Hitler, so almost kind of like she's stepping out the Germans and stepping out Hitler. She's got a sandwich. She's very dirty, so you can tell that she's been working all day. You'll also kind of notice that she's definitely a little bit much more muscular than, say, the woman to the right, because, she's working in a factory working with machinery. Obviously, she's going to develop muscle. Women have muscle. This always comes as a shock to men, but she's definitely more like on her lunch break, she's working, but she's also very proud. You could tell, like, kind of like with her pose, like, yeah, she's dirty, and, yes, she's on her lunch break, and yeah, she's developed some muscles, but she's very proud to be doing her part for the Americans. On the right-hand version, you see the more traditional image of Rosie the Riveter saying, "We can do it," with the flexing and the muscles. The American flag isn't prominent there, but you can see, America's colors with the blue in her, and kind of like her work jumpsuit, and then she has like the little head bandana with the red and the white. I always ask kids, like, why do you think that the one on the right has become more iconic and more reproduced than the one on the left? And most people would agree, because it presents more stereotypical ideas of what it is to be feminine. Like, yeah, she's strong, but she's not overtly muscular like the Norman Rockwell painting. She's still got her makeup on. You could tell she's got blush on and lipstick and like some eyeshadow and things like that. Again, still very like feministic like qualities. Whereas like the Rosie the Riveter on the left, she's clearly not wearing makeup. Maybe like a little bit of lipstick, but she's dirty because she's been working in a factory all day. It's much more, I would say, like realistic. I always ask kids like which one they like better. And I always get like mixed responses. Some are like, well, I like the one on the right because I just feel like it's, it's the one that I've seen all the time. But then I get people who are like, I actually appreciate the one on the left more, because it does show women in a more like realistic, way. Is that like, yeah, she's going to be working, and obviously she's dirty, and like obviously like she's been able to develop muscles. But even though the one on the right is more iconic, the one on the left from Norman Rockwell is the original Rosie the Riveter.